Hello and welcome to English Spark, the place where learning English becomes simple, practical, and part of your daily life. In this series, we are going to explore 10 powerful methods that will completely transform the way you learn English. Many people spend years studying grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary, yet they still struggle to speak or understand the language. The problem is not effort, but method. Learning a language is not about studying harder, it is about learning smarter and practicing in ways that match how the brain naturally acquires language. In the next 10 parts, you will discover 10 different approaches to learning English, each one focusing on a specific technique that you can apply immediately. These methods are designed for real people with real lives, meaning you don't need expensive courses or perfect conditions to improve. Whether you are a beginner or already have some experience, these strategies will help you build confidence, improve fluency, and make English feel natural instead of difficult. Stay focused, take your time, and let's begin this journey step by step. One of the most effective ways to learn English is through daily exposure, which means surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible until it becomes a natural part of your environment. Instead of limiting English to a short study session, you begin to integrate it into your everyday life in small but consistent ways. This method works because the brain learns languages best through repetition, familiarity, and context. When you hear, see, and interact with English regularly, your mind starts recognizing patterns, understanding meanings, and storing information without conscious effort. Over time, what once felt difficult begins to feel normal, and what once required translation becomes automatic understanding. To apply this method, you can start by making simple changes in your daily routine. For example, switch the language of your phone, social media, or favorite apps to English. Follow English-speaking content creators, watch short videos, or listen to simple podcasts while doing everyday tasks like walking or relaxing. Even if you do not understand everything, your brain is still absorbing sounds, rhythms, and common expressions. The key is consistency, not perfection. You are training your ears and your mind to become familiar with the language, and this familiarity is the foundation of fluency. Another important aspect of daily exposure is passive learning combined with active attention. Passive learning happens when you are simply exposed to English, such as listening to music or watching videos in the background. Active attention happens when you focus on specific words, phrases, or meanings. The best results come from combining both. For instance, you can listen casually to a podcast during the day, then later replay a short part and try to understand it more deeply, repeating phrases or noting new vocabulary. This balance allows your brain to absorb large amounts of language naturally while also strengthening comprehension and memory through focused practice. Daily exposure also helps you develop an intuitive sense of English, where you begin to feel what sounds correct without always knowing why. This intuition is what native speakers rely on, and it is built through repeated contact with the language rather than memorization alone. For example, after hearing a phrase many times, you will recognize it instantly when someone says it, and you will eventually start using it yourself without thinking. This process may seem slow at first, but it accelerates over time as your brain builds connections and patterns. To make this method truly effective, it is important to stay consistent and patient. You do not need hours of study every day, even small amounts of exposure, when repeated daily, create significant progress. The goal is to make English part of your life, not something separate that you only practice occasionally. By surrounding yourself with the language, engaging with it regularly, and allowing your brain to adapt naturally, you create a strong foundation that will support all other learning methods. This is not just a technique, it is a mindset that transforms how you approach language learning and sets the stage for everything that comes next. One of the most powerful methods to learn English effectively is through intensive listening, a technique that trains your brain to understand spoken language naturally, quickly, and without constant translation. Listening is not just a passive activity where you hear sounds, it is an active process where your brain learns to recognize patterns, connect words with meaning, and interpret tone and context. When you focus deeply on listening, you begin to understand how English is really used in real life, not just how it appears in textbooks. This method is especially important because communication starts with understanding, and the stronger your listening skills are, the easier it becomes to speak, respond, and interact confidently. To practice intensive listening, you need to go beyond simply playing audio in the background. Choose a short audio clip, such as a podcast segment, a dialogue, or a short story, and listen to it with full attention. The first time, focus on understanding the general meaning without worrying about every word. The second time, pay attention to specific details, such as pronunciation, sentence structure, and repeated phrases. The third time, try to repeat what you hear, imitating the speaker's tone, rhythm, and intonation. This repetition is what trains your brain to process English faster and more naturally. Over time, your ears become sharper, and you begin to recognize words and expressions instantly, even when spoken quickly. Another key element of intensive listening is breaking down difficult audio into smaller parts. Instead of trying to understand a long conversation all at once, divide it into short sections of a few seconds or sentences. Focus on each part carefully, replay it if needed, and try to understand how the words connect. This method helps you notice things that are often missed, such as connected speech, where words blend together, or reduced forms, where certain sounds are shortened or softened. By training your ear to catch these details, you develop a deeper understanding of natural English and improve your ability to follow real conversations without getting lost. Combining listening with speaking makes this method even more effective. After listening to a sentence or a short passage, try to repeat it aloud immediately, matching the speaker's pronunciation and rhythm as closely as possible. This technique, often called shadowing, strengthens both listening and speaking at the same time. It forces your brain to process language quickly and helps you internalize natural speech patterns. You can also pause the audio and try to continue the sentence yourself, predicting what comes next. This engages your mind actively and improves your ability to think in English rather than translate from your native language. Consistency is what turns intensive listening into real progress. Practicing for even 15 to 20 minutes a day can create noticeable improvement over time, especially if you stay focused and repeat the process regularly. Choose content that matches your level but still challenges you slightly, and gradually increase the difficulty as your skills improve. By exposing yourself to different accents, speeds, and topics, you prepare your brain to handle real-life English in all its forms. Intensive listening is not just about understanding words, it is about training your mind to think, react, and communicate in English naturally, building a strong foundation for fluency and confidence. One of the fastest and most direct ways to improve your English is through constant speaking practice, because speaking forces you to use everything you know in real time. Unlike listening or reading, where you receive information, speaking requires you to produce language actively, organize your thoughts, choose the right words, and express ideas clearly. This process may feel difficult at first, especially if you are afraid of making mistakes, but it is exactly what builds fluency. The more you speak, the more comfortable you become, and the faster your brain learns to think in English instead of translating. Speaking is not about being perfect, it is about being consistent and willing to try, even when you are unsure. A simple and powerful way to begin is by practicing self-speaking, where you talk to yourself out loud about anything you see, think, or do during the day. For example, you can describe your actions, explain your plans, or talk about your opinions on a topic. This might feel unusual at first, but it is one of the most effective ways to build confidence and fluency without pressure. When you speak alone, you are free to make mistakes, repeat sentences, and experiment with new vocabulary. Over time, this practice trains your brain to form sentences more quickly and naturally, making real conversations much easier. Another effective technique is to use structured speaking exercises. Instead of speaking randomly, choose a topic and talk about it for a few minutes. For example, you can speak about your day, your favorite movie, your goals, or a recent experience. Try to organize your thoughts into a beginning, middle, and end, even if your sentences are simple. You can also record yourself and listen later to identify areas for improvement, such as pronunciation, pauses, or repetition of words. This type of practice helps you become more aware of your speaking habits and gradually improve your clarity and confidence. Practicing speaking with others takes your skills to the next level. Conversations with friends, language partners, or even AI tools challenge you to respond quickly and understand different speaking styles. During these interactions, focus on communication rather than perfection. If you do not know a word, try to explain it in another way instead of stopping. This develops flexibility and creativity in language use. You can also ask questions, express opinions, and react naturally to what others say, which makes your practice more dynamic and realistic. The goal is to create as many opportunities as possible to speak, because every conversation strengthens your fluency and reduces hesitation. To improve even faster, combine speaking with listening and repetition. Listen to short dialogues or sentences, then repeat them aloud, trying to match the speaker's pronunciation and rhythm. This helps you sound more natural and improves your ability to understand spoken English. You can also practice thinking in English before speaking, which reduces the need to translate and speeds up your responses. Over time, your speech becomes smoother, more accurate, and more confident. Constant speaking practice transforms English from something you understand into something you can actively use, allowing you to communicate effectively in real-life situations and express yourself with ease. Learning English through smart reading is one of the most effective ways to expand your vocabulary, improve your understanding of sentence structure, and develop a natural feel for the language. Reading is not just about recognizing words on a page, it is about interacting with ideas, absorbing patterns, and training your brain to understand how English works in context. When done correctly, reading becomes a powerful tool that supports all other skills, including speaking, listening, and writing. The key is not to read everything, but to read in a smart, focused, and active way that maximizes learning without overwhelming you. To begin with, it is important to choose materials that match your level while still challenging you slightly. If the text is too difficult, you will feel frustrated and lose motivation, and if it is too easy, you will not learn much. The ideal content is something where you understand around 60 to 80% of the words, allowing you to follow the main idea while still encountering new vocabulary. This balance keeps you engaged and helps your brain learn naturally through context. You can start with short stories, simple articles, or even social media posts in English, then gradually move to more complex texts like blogs, books, or news articles. A crucial part of smart reading is focusing on meaning instead of translating every word. Many learners make the mistake of stopping at each unknown word, which interrupts the flow and makes reading slow and tiring. Instead, try to understand the general idea of the sentence or paragraph first. Often, the context gives you enough information to guess the meaning of unfamiliar words. This approach trains your brain to think in English and improves your ability to understand quickly without relying on translation. After finishing a paragraph or section, you can go back and check important new words, but always prioritize understanding the message first. Another powerful technique is to turn reading into an active exercise rather than a passive activity. For example, after reading a short passage, try to summarize it in your own words, either by speaking or writing. You can also ask yourself questions about the text, such as what the main idea is, what the author is trying to say, or what might happen next. These actions force your brain to engage deeply with the content, which improves comprehension and memory. Additionally, highlighting useful phrases instead of just single words helps you learn how English is naturally structured, making it easier to use those expressions in your own speaking and writing. To strengthen your progress, combine reading with other skills. For example, read a text aloud to improve pronunciation and rhythm, or listen to an audio version while following the written text to connect sounds with words. This multi-skill approach reinforces learning and helps you remember vocabulary more effectively. Over time, you will notice that your reading becomes faster, your vocabulary grows naturally, and your understanding of English becomes deeper and more intuitive. Smart reading is not just about consuming text, it is about learning from it in a way that transforms your language skills and builds a strong foundation for fluency. Learning English through consistent writing practice is one of the most powerful ways to strengthen your ability to express ideas clearly, organize your thoughts, and use vocabulary and grammar effectively. Writing forces you to slow down and think carefully about what you want to say, which makes it an excellent tool for deep learning. Unlike speaking, where words come quickly and sometimes without control, writing gives you time to reflect, correct mistakes, and build stronger sentences. This process helps you understand how English works on a deeper level and allows you to gradually improve accuracy and clarity. Over time, writing becomes a bridge that connects what you know with how you use the language in real situations. To start practicing writing effectively, you do not need complicated topics or long essays. Begin with simple and meaningful exercises, such as writing about your daily routine, your plans, your thoughts, or your experiences. Even a short paragraph every day can make a big difference if you stay consistent. The goal is not to be perfect, but to practice regularly and express yourself as clearly as possible. As you write, try to use words and phrases that you have recently learned, which helps reinforce your memory and expands your active vocabulary. Over time, your sentences will become more natural, and you will feel more confident using English to communicate your ideas. An important strategy in writing practice is to focus on clarity before complexity. Many learners try to use advanced vocabulary or complicated grammar too early, which can lead to confusion and frustration. Instead, aim to express your ideas in simple, correct sentences first, then gradually add more detail and variation as your skills improve. This step-by-step approach builds a strong foundation and prevents bad habits. You can also rewrite the same idea in different ways, which helps you discover new sentence structures and improves flexibility in your language use. Writing is not just about producing text, it is about exploring different ways to communicate effectively. To improve faster, combine writing with feedback and correction. After writing something, review it carefully and try to identify your own mistakes. You can also use AI tools, language partners, or online platforms to get corrections and suggestions. Seeing your errors and learning how to fix them is one of the fastest ways to improve. Over time, you will start recognizing patterns in your mistakes and avoiding them naturally. Another useful exercise is to rewrite corrected sentences, which helps reinforce the correct form and strengthens your understanding. This process transforms writing into an active learning cycle where each mistake becomes an opportunity to grow. Finally, integrating writing with other skills makes your practice even more effective. For example, after reading an article or listening to a podcast, you can write a short summary or share your opinion about it. This reinforces comprehension and helps you connect ideas across different forms of language use. You can also turn your writing into speaking practice by reading it aloud, which improves pronunciation and fluency. By practicing writing consistently, reflecting on your work, and combining it with other skills, you build a strong ability to express yourself clearly and confidently in English. Writing becomes more than just an exercise, it becomes a tool that supports your entire language learning journey and brings you closer to fluency step by step. Learning English through watching videos and visual content is one of the most natural and enjoyable methods, because it combines sound, image, emotion, and context all at once. When you watch something in English, you are not only hearing the language, but also seeing how it is used in real situations, which makes understanding much easier and more intuitive. Facial expressions, body language, and visual clues all support comprehension, allowing your brain to connect words with meaning without needing translation. This method closely resembles how children learn their first language, by observing, listening, and gradually understanding through repeated exposure. Over time, this type of immersion helps you develop a strong sense of how English sounds and feels in real life. To make the most of this method, it is important to watch content actively rather than passively. Instead of just watching for entertainment, try to focus on what is being said, how sentences are formed, and which expressions are repeated. You can start with simple videos, such as short clips, vlogs, or beginner-friendly content, then gradually move to movies, series, and documentaries. At first, you may need subtitles, but try to use them as a support, not a crutch. Watch once with subtitles to understand the general idea, then watch again without them to challenge your listening skills. This gradual transition trains your brain to rely on sound and context instead of reading. Another effective technique is to pause and interact with what you watch. For example, after a short scene or sentence, pause the video and try to repeat what you heard. Imitate the pronunciation, rhythm, and tone of the speaker as closely as possible. This helps you sound more natural and improves your speaking ability. You can also try to summarize what happened in your own words or predict what will happen next. These small actions turn watching into an active learning experience, where your brain is constantly engaged instead of just receiving information passively. Watching also exposes you to real-life language, including slang, idioms, and informal expressions that are often not taught in textbooks. This is especially useful if you want to understand native speakers in everyday conversations. Pay attention to how people greet each other, express emotions, agree or disagree, and react in different situations. These patterns are essential for natural communication. By repeatedly hearing and seeing these expressions in context, you begin to understand when and how to use them yourself, which makes your English more fluent and authentic. To strengthen this method, combine watching with repetition and consistency. Watch regularly, even if only for a short time each day, and revisit content that you enjoy. Rewatching helps you notice new details, understand more deeply, and reinforce vocabulary and expressions. Over time, your listening becomes sharper, your pronunciation improves, and your confidence grows. Watching is not just entertainment, it becomes a powerful tool that immerses you in the language, helping you learn English in a way that feels natural, engaging, and effective. Learning English through social interaction and real communication is one of the most effective ways to transform your knowledge into actual skill, because language is not just something you understand, it is something you use with others in real situations. When you interact with people, whether face-to-face or online, you are forced to listen carefully, respond quickly, and adapt to different speaking styles. This dynamic process trains your brain to handle real communication instead of controlled exercises. At the beginning, it may feel uncomfortable or even stressful, especially if you are not confident, but this is exactly where the real progress happens. Every conversation, no matter how simple, pushes you forward and builds your ability to communicate naturally. To start using this method, you do not need perfect grammar or a large vocabulary. You only need the willingness to try. Begin with simple interactions, such as greeting someone, asking basic questions, or having short conversations about daily topics. These small steps create a foundation and gradually reduce fear. Over time, you can expand your conversations to include opinions, experiences, and more complex ideas. The key is to focus on communication, not perfection. Mistakes are not failures, they are part of the learning process and help you improve faster than silence ever could. The more you speak, the more your brain becomes comfortable with forming sentences and expressing ideas. Listening plays a major role in social learning. When you talk to others, pay close attention to how they speak, which words they use, and how they respond in different situations. Notice their tone, rhythm, and common expressions. Even if you do not understand everything, try to catch the main idea and respond accordingly. If something is unclear, you can ask for clarification, which is a natural part of communication. This kind of active listening helps you learn directly from real usage of the language and improves your ability to follow conversations more easily over time. Practicing in group settings adds another level of challenge and growth. In group conversations, you are exposed to different accents, speaking speeds, and perspectives. You learn how to enter a conversation, respond to multiple people, and follow changing topics. This strengthens your ability to stay focused and react naturally, even in complex situations. You can join online communities, language exchange groups, or discussion clubs where English is used regularly. These environments provide valuable opportunities to practice in a realistic and supportive setting, helping you gain confidence and experience. To make the most of social interaction, reflect on your conversations after they end. Think about what you understood well, what you found difficult, and which new words or expressions you heard. You can even repeat parts of the conversation in your mind or practice them out loud later. This reflection reinforces learning and helps you improve with each interaction. Over time, speaking with others becomes less stressful and more enjoyable, and you begin to communicate more smoothly and naturally. Social interaction turns English from a subject you study into a tool you use to connect, share, and express yourself in the real world. Learning English through smart repetition is one of the most effective ways to strengthen memory, improve fluency, and make the language feel natural over time. Repetition does not mean repeating things randomly or mechanically without understanding, but rather revisiting words, phrases, and structures in a focused and meaningful way. The brain learns best when it encounters the same information multiple times in different contexts, because each repetition reinforces neural connections and makes recall faster and easier. When you apply repetition correctly, you move information from short-term memory into long-term memory, which is essential for real fluency. To use this method effectively, focus on repeating useful and relevant content instead of isolated words. For example, instead of memorizing a single word, learn it within a sentence or phrase that you can actually use in real life. Repeat that sentence several times, say it out loud, write it, and try to use it in a conversation. This type of repetition is powerful because it teaches you not only vocabulary but also how words are naturally connected. Over time, these repeated phrases become automatic, allowing you to speak more smoothly without thinking too much about grammar or structure. Another important aspect of smart repetition is spaced repetition, which means reviewing information at specific intervals instead of all at once. For example, you can review new words or phrases after a few hours, then the next day, then after a few days, and so on. This method strengthens memory by reminding your brain of the information just before it starts to forget it. You can use flashcards, apps, or simple notes to organize your reviews. The key is consistency and timing, not the amount of information. Even a small number of words, when reviewed regularly, can become a strong part of your active vocabulary. Combining repetition with other skills makes it even more effective. For instance, you can listen to a short audio clip multiple times, repeat it aloud, write it down, and then try to use the same phrases in your own sentences. This multi-layered approach engages different parts of your brain and reinforces learning from multiple angles. Repeating content in different ways keeps practice interesting and prevents boredom, while also deepening your understanding. Over time, you will notice that words and expressions come to your mind more quickly and naturally, which is a clear sign of progress. Consistency is what turns repetition into real results. Practicing a little every day is far more effective than repeating a lot in a single session and then stopping for several days. By revisiting content regularly, you build a strong foundation where vocabulary, expressions, and structures become part of your natural thinking process. Smart repetition transforms learning from something temporary into something permanent, helping you retain what you learn and use it confidently in real communication. One of the most transformative methods for learning English is training yourself to think in English, because this technique directly removes the habit of translating from your native language, which is one of the biggest obstacles to fluency. Many learners understand English but struggle to speak smoothly because they first think in their own language and then try to translate, which slows down communication and creates hesitation. When you begin to think directly in English, your brain starts forming ideas using the language itself, making your responses faster, more natural, and more fluid. This shift does not happen instantly, but with consistent practice, it becomes one of the most powerful habits you can develop. To begin thinking in English, start with simple thoughts and everyday situations. For example, as you go through your day, describe what you are doing using basic sentences like, "I am walking," "I need to buy food," or "This place is very quiet." These small mental exercises may seem simple, but they train your brain to connect actions and thoughts directly with English words. As you become more comfortable, you can expand your thoughts into longer sentences and more complex ideas, such as explaining your plans, reflecting on your experiences, or imagining future situations. The goal is to gradually replace your internal language with English, step by step. Another effective way to strengthen this habit is to create mental conversations. Imagine that you are speaking with someone and think about how you would respond in English. You can ask yourself questions and answer them, express opinions, or even debate different ideas in your mind. This practice prepares you for real conversations by allowing you to rehearse language in a safe and controlled way. It also helps you discover gaps in your vocabulary, which you can then work on improving. Over time, these internal dialogues become more natural and automatic, making real communication easier and more confident. Combining thinking with speaking and listening accelerates your progress even more. For example, after listening to something in English, try to think about it in English instead of switching back to your native language. Summarize what you heard, form opinions, or imagine what could happen next. You can also speak your thoughts out loud, which reinforces both thinking and speaking skills simultaneously. This integrated practice helps your brain stay in English mode for longer periods, reducing the need to switch between languages and making your understanding more direct and intuitive. Consistency is essential when developing this habit. At first, you may forget and return to thinking in your native language, and that is completely normal. The key is to gently bring your focus back to English whenever you notice it. Over time, the effort required becomes smaller, and thinking in English starts to feel natural. This method does not require extra time or special tools. You can practice it anytime, anywhere. By training your mind to operate in English, you create a strong internal environment for learning, where understanding and expression happen naturally and without hesitation. This prepares you for the final step, where all the methods come together into a complete system for mastering the language. After exploring different methods such as daily exposure, intensive listening, constant speaking, smart reading, consistent writing, visual learning through watching, social interaction, smart repetition, and thinking in English, the final step is to understand how to combine all these methods into one complete system that leads to true mastery. Learning English is not about relying on a single technique, but about creating a balanced routine where each skill supports the others. When you listen, you improve your understanding; when you speak, you improve your expression; when you read, you expand your vocabulary; and when you write, you organize your thoughts. The real progress happens when these skills are practiced together consistently, forming a natural cycle of learning and improvement. To build this system, you can design a simple daily routine that includes multiple forms of practice without feeling overwhelmed. For example, you might start your day by thinking in English and speaking to yourself about your plans, then listen to a short podcast or watch a video while focusing on understanding the main ideas. Later, you can read a short article and highlight useful phrases, followed by writing a few sentences or a paragraph about what you learned. If possible, include a short conversation with someone or even practice speaking using AI tools. This type of routine does not need to be long or complicated, but it should be consistent and varied, allowing your brain to engage with English in different ways throughout the day. An important part of this system is adaptation and awareness. As you continue learning, you will notice your strengths and weaknesses more clearly. You might find that your listening improves quickly while speaking feels more difficult, or that you understand well but struggle to express ideas. Instead of feeling frustrated, use this awareness to adjust your practice. Spend more time on the areas that challenge you, while still maintaining balance with other skills. This flexible approach ensures continuous progress and prevents stagnation, keeping your learning dynamic and effective. Immersion plays a major role in mastering English. Surround yourself with the language as much as possible by integrating it into your daily life, through music, videos, conversations, reading materials, and even your thoughts. The more you expose yourself to English, the more familiar it becomes, and the faster your brain adapts to processing it naturally. Over time, you will notice that you understand without translating, respond without hesitation, and express yourself with increasing confidence. This is the result of consistent practice and full engagement with the language. Finally, true mastery comes from persistence, patience, and belief in the process. There will be moments when progress feels slow, but every small effort contributes to long-term growth. By combining all the methods you have learned, staying consistent, and keeping a positive mindset, you create a powerful system that transforms English from something you study into something you live. This is the point where fluency becomes real, where communication feels natural, and where the language becomes a tool for expressing your ideas, connecting with others, and exploring the world with confidence.